Welcome to the Amazing Truth Podcast, a podcast where we focus on real issues and have real talk, and as always, provide a biblical perspective. We hope that you will be blessed as you listen.
Hello and welcome to the Amazing Truth Podcast. This is the Amazing Truth Minute.
This is the Amazing Truth Podcast. The Amazing Truth Podcast. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Stitcher. Like us on Facebook at the Amazing Truth Podcast. The Amazing Truth Podcast. Real issues, real talk.
For the Amazing Truth Minute, today we'll focus on 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18. And it says, "In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you." Have you ever met someone who complained about everything? Spending time with a chronic complainer is exhausting. Complainers focus on everything that is wrong, while those who are grateful focus on what is right. In the Apostle Paul's first letter to the Thessalonians, he wrote, "In everything give thanks." Simply put, God's people are commanded to give thanks regardless of the situation. Cultivating an attitude of gratitude takes our thoughts off ourselves and focuses on our minds on all the ways God has blessed us. It's appropriate to give thanks to God because He is the source of every good thing we possess. Of course, if there's an area we are lacking, we have permission to ask God to meet those needs. But being thankful, even as we present our request, stirs our faith by reminding us of all the ways God has already been so good to us. And that is the Amazing Truth Minute.
The Amazing Truth Podcast. Real issues, real talk.
All right, welcome back again for another episode. You know, one thing I like, Kenan,
Oh, you like
is
me?
the you always try to slide these things, but it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
And one thing I like is the pre-recording conversations we have. Like that's a podcast in
I
itself.
always tell myself, just turn the mics without you guys knowing.
Just let it go. You know, just had a wonderful experience, wonderful conversation. You know, we didn't leave. It's like we never left because Madam Huldah is back. You know, is back with more juice. I don't want to be sued, but with more juice, right? So we're excited to be back again. We are continuing with our conversation of maybe I want to say finding your purpose, leadership, planning, 2022, having a purpose in life, all those kind of stuff. And so our conversation is definitely geared to get you to think about your journey so that you can figure out what you want to do with that. So as usual, I'm here with my one and only stubborn but lovely co-host.
I myself.
Kenan. And we're back.
Yeah.
We don't need to introduce Huldah again, but I want to say this because she was gracious enough not to say this thing. So I'm going to say it on her behalf. Last time we kind of talked a little bit about upbringing, how she came here. Huldah walked us through her journey, struggle to settling in the U.S., how that affected her life, and some very good conversation. If you missed it, I'll say pause, just go to the previous one, and watch or listen, and then you can come and pick it up from there. But Huldah is not only accomplished in terms of academics. She's a leader of Mwanyagetinge. People wonder what Mwanyagetinge is. Mwanyagetinge is a Kisi name, and it means children of Nyegetinge. Nyegetinge was the mother, So that's the culture. So that's where we come from. However, I don't know whether by design or by default, this group of people are the most in this region.
So just follow each other.
Exactly, follow each other. So she leads one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Kenyan organization in here in the U.S. But also, she's not only been a leader in terms of that organization, but she's also running for Senate in the U.S. See, she didn't want to say that. She was gracious. She was kind enough.
She was humble enough to let us bring it up.
Let us know. So, just even the fact that she thought about it, the daring, spirit to even go that direction. First of all, let's put this in context. Yes. When you talk about these Abagusi, Gusi group of people, they're very traditional. They're very patriarchal. So even for not only a woman to run to become a leader, but a young woman to run to become a leader, there's guts. You know, Kenan and I, when we show up, they tell us you're too young. You men get out from the real men to get in, right? But just for you even to do that, you know, want to celebrate that, want to appreciate that. And not only that you keep on soaring higher and higher, and you know, setting the bar higher for us. So
and again, what was interesting before we turned the mics on, she kind of told us about the journey of when she was campaigning for the Momanyi thing.
Yeah.
And the story she shared,
I know,
mean, just points to us how patriarchal we are.
Yep.
Yes. Which is something we need to.
We're working on that.
Yeah,
let's celebrate the fact that we have.
That's true.
That's a milestone, right? That's a journey, you know. But also, it's very dangerous because younger men, our generation, we are missing in action somewhere, especially of our color.
Yes. So you and I think we had a function at a certain church here, and the groups that were singing were all young women,
young girls,
young girls. There was not a single choir or a single group
for men.
So in the end, Ezra had to call the men, and it was hard for them to come.
Yes.
You know? So it's. I mean, we empowered the girl child, but we didn't tell the boy child what to do when the girl child is empowered.
Exactly. So we need to balance and keep that skill.
It's so important.
You know, and also in our community, academically, it seems as though women, younger girls, are thriving in terms of pursuing their careers, their colleges and stuff. We as men are also thriving.
Ezra, let me ask you, how many male supervisors have you had?
That's a good question. Actually, I haven't had a male supervisor.
I've had one way back. All through have been women. So that's something.
It's all good. Oh boy, child. We, but in God's timing, like always saying is find your purpose. And leadership is not about gender.
Right.
Leadership is just about finding your purpose in life and living for it. So thank you, Huldah, for setting the tone, for going an extra mile, and for sure your childhood shaped you. So let's dive into this. You've been a leader now in this community. If I was to ask you top 3 problems you've encountered or you see as a community of people of color, one, that's the first question. The second question we'll ask is, when you think about people who have shaped you in leadership, both or no, I know family's got a feature there, but outside world or books or programs, what will those be for someone who's thinking and saying, hey, this is where I want to go?
Oh, wow. Those are really intense questions. The first one you asked about 3 challenges that I see in the community. And before I answer that, I want to go back to what you brought up earlier in terms of being a woman and being a young woman in a very male-dominated society. I remember when I was running for Momanyi to get president, there was a lot of assumptions that were thrown out there, false information about who I was and why I don't qualify for the role, and really questioning my vision and my drive as to why I wanted to run. And to be honest, it was tough being a young woman who was asking to be in a role where it has always been dominated by male, in a very male-dominated culture. Even after I won, I still had a lot of infighting in terms of, undermining my leadership and my vision. And there was a couple of, incidences where somebody would tell me, well, I didn't, get elected by my people to be lectured by you. If a male was there, would that have been the same conversation that they were having? And so there was moments where I felt that I could still serve my community without even, having to go all through this. But I have to tell you, going through that process, and the beauty about our people is that once you have established trust with them, they have your back. And I have to say that with God's help, and me really, building trust within the leadership team, within the community, has gotten me over to the other side, where now the community does trust in my leadership and does support my leadership, which is very important, by the way, because if you are leading and you don't have the support of your community, of the people that you're leading, then that's not leadership. And so it has taken me a long time to get to a place where I finally feel like, yes, you know, I do belong here. I am supported, and the community really has embraced me as a leader. And so I'm grateful for that. All right, now let's go back to your question.
Can I add
Yes.
something though? I think it brings to perspective how difficult it is as an immigrant.
Yes.
Let alone an immigrant, someone who's of color, and a woman at that, you know. And so it seems like you kind of started back there, so you had to work your way through all that. So that's a culture Israel we need to change.
Yeah.
As a people.
Yeah.
But that's a conversation for another day.
Yes.
Go ahead. That's a conversation for another day. But it's important for us to highlight two things. One is that who you are, when you are chosen, nobody can stop what you're destined to be.
Absolutely.
To do. So
Yes.
finding your purpose in life, and you will meet those, I don't want to call them problems, I want to call them challenges, because there is no great leader who has not encountered challenges.
It builds character.
It
Uh-huh.
builds
really does.
character.
Character
Exactly.
development. Yeah.
It's all about
Character
character development,
Yes.
right? And stuff like that. All right. So,
All right, question number one.
So, question number one is
Three things.
three things.
Challenges.
Challenges
Not
that you
issues.
as a leader, okay.
Yes,
What was
that I see in our
what's
community.
What's the difference between issues and challenges?
Well, yeah.
That's for another conversation.
Okay, because I want to make sure I ask the right question. So, okay, three things
Three things.
that you see.
Yes. So I think three things that really hinder the growth of our community are number one, and we talked about this, you know, before we officially started recording, is that handout mentality.
Okay.
You know, and we can have a whole conversation surrounding that. The second one is the mentality of having one foot here and one foot in Kenya,
Okay.
where, you know, we are dividing our resources. And that touches a little bit in, you know, that touches the financial aspect of our community and how we look at finances, right? And financial stability of our community. And then lastly, participation in the political process.
Okay.
A lot of our people have not really gotten to a point where, you know, there's this common understanding that, you know, this political process affects us more than we want to acknowledge. And like you mentioned earlier, one of the main reasons, if you ask me why I'm running for State Senate District 40, is because I want to open doors that are there for our people. You know, and being a part of the process really puts you at the table, because if you're not at the table voicing, you know, your concerns and your community's issues, then laws and policies are being made on your behalf that doesn't even address what you're going through. You know, so if you would have asked me three things, those are the three main things that I see in our community that we need to seriously address.
When I tell you I ran for Ramsey,
Uh-huh.
don't laugh. These are exactly the points these are the things I wanted to raise. I didn't have a manifesto. I was gonna come up, but these are some of the things.
When you told me you ran, I was wondering, were you running in Ramsey physically?
My name was on the ballot, so it would have been on the ballot for Ramsey City Mayor. So I just needed signatures.
And how many signatures did you need?
None.
we laugh about this.
But yeah,
We laugh about this, but
Yes.
there's a reason why. I want to read a quote that Kenan and I embrace and love here. Kenan, you know the quote that we talk.
I do.
You know, it says, with an army of youth rightly trained, with an army of youth rightly trained. So let me pull it up. There's this quote here. It's from the book written by Ellen White. She says this. She writes and says, listen to this, and this is for us. It says, "Dear youth, what is the aim and the purpose of your life? Are you ambitious for your education that you may have a name and position in the world? Have you thoughts that you dare not express, that you may one day stand upon the summit of intellectual greatness, that you may sit in deliberative and legislative councils and help to enact laws for the nation. There is nothing wrong with these aspirations. You may, every one of you, make your mark. You should not be content with no mean of attainments. Aim high and spare no pain to reach the standards. Success in any line demands definite aim. See, every time we read
deep.
about these, it just blows our mind because especially I or we as Christians, there are things that we are taught growing up that you separate these two things. You're not supposed to sit in certain tables because it's going to do this, it's going to do that, it's going to do this. So now, that leads to my second question.
Yes.
Why did you choose to be a leader? Did you find yourself in leadership? How did you find yourself in this? Is this always been part of you?
So I'm gonna answer a question that you had asked because you asked me two questions earlier.
You see, that's the
So let me go back to that because I think the second question is really important too, and then we'll come back to this question. You asked me about the books that I read.
Oh yeah.
Knowledge is power. When you growing up, I remember my dad would have us read books in the summertime after we have tunad,
The greens, the burgers.
greens. Hey, you remember back in the day, you would go to the farmer's market in Minneapolis, get 20 bags of managus, and then you had 5. So after you chew that all
You don't
day,
like those burgers.
Anyways.
Okay.
Where did
we'd
you
eat
guys grow?
all
You
winter.
didn't have a silver spoon like some of us.
So, hey,
I'm kidding.
some of you are just coming in now.
I know.
We worked. So I remember also during the summers, my dad would, after we've done that, we were required to read books and write book reports. And so that love of reading, and I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an avid reader. I'm not going to lie. But when I get a chance, I do read. And especially now that I'm getting into certain positions and certain environments, I definitely want to be able to articulate myself in a manner that actually sound like I'm smart enough that I'm reading.
You know what you're talking
And
about.
exactly. And how do you do that? You read books that elevate you to that level. And so if you asked me what books have made an impact in my life, one of them is All Things Fall Apart. I don't know if you've read that book. Ooh, when I read, and my dad introduced me to that book. And when I read that book, it was an eye-opening in the sense that, the one quote that I still live by is, if you wash your hands, you will sit among kings. And I literally took that and I was like, look, I'm going to wash my hands because I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do this so that I could be sitting at that table, And then the second one is Who Moved My Cheese? Because that one, it literally talks about, financial literacy and paying yourself. Paying yourself first. It's a really good book for it's an easy read for anybody who really wants to, embark on this financial discovery and what you want to do with your finances. That is a very simple book to read and very practical. And then the last one is something Babylon. I can't remember quite the title, but the last Kings of Babylon or something like that. It talks about life lessons, and it talks about how you value yourself and how you carry yourself and whatnot. So I'll when I remember that name, I'll tell you guys. So yes, I want to encourage our community, especially young people, love to read, because when you read, even if you don't have the luxury of traveling and experiencing different cultures, it literally opens up your world, your how you think. You expand your thought process when you read, because it allows you to think differently because you have that knowledge. If you don't have that knowledge, you're not going to go out of your way to think differently because you don't have that capacity. And so, yes, reading and having a book list that you have, even though you are not an avid reader, at least make it a point to read a book and add to your knowledge base. Now let's go to the question.
Right. So you mentioned, I think I'll go back to the 3 challenges, 3 issues, and maybe the handout mentality.
Yes.
I don't know where to start. To explain. Maybe
Absolutely.
let's start with that.
What do you mean?
What do you mean by that?
Oh, My goodness. This is a very difficult one in the sense that, it's a part of. I feel like it's a part of our DNA as a people. Where even from we can even trace it back to the colonization period. Where when we were colonized, it was this mentality that was created where we have to depend on somebody for our own survival, right? And over the decades, over the centuries, that has evolved to the point where, I was just talking to my brother here and during the break, even now, as a community, if there's resources coming in and it's targeting a certain criteria of individuals, we find a way, even if we're able to afford that resource, we find a way of wanting and needing that resource when we actually really, in the real sense, we don't need it, when we are able to afford it, and so I think that's a mentality in our community that we seriously need to address. If we want to create sustainable development for our community, we have to stay away from that. And you chime in, Ezra, really?
I know. I was
from your perspective as a pastor, right?
Yes. I think one of the things that I've heard you say, if I can sum it up, is not lack of resources.
Yes.
It's not lack of ideas. It is a mindset issue that we have that shows up in handout mentality. It's a mindset issues that shows up in our involvement in the society, in the community we want to live in. It's a mindset issue that informs us. So we have a mind that I'm going to live in two parts of the world. So you don't live either well because your mind is not settled. It's a mindset that colonial, everything was brought and was given to us. And so that's what we've carried over and we're handing down through. So as a leader, how do we change behavior and minds?
And thinking about it too, as you think of that question, just to add or complicate it, I think it started way back, like you said. But even now, if say where we come from, Kenya, if you want to go look for a job, they'll ask you, who do you know? Or if I have someone in a higher office, if I have someone in the higher office,
even if you don't qualify for it,
right? You don't, or someone will say, okay, go to this person, they will help you do it. Your qualifications really don't come to the table, because someone will hand you the job. So someone was telling me in Kenya that they were at a job or a company function, and they were being given driver's licenses as gifts. So that in itself, where do you get the urge to go learn driving? You don't really. You've been given. So how does that translate to you being industrious? So it comes from far, and it's a disease.
So how do we handle that? And how do we ensure that is not handed down to the next generation?
Absolutely. I think one of the reasons why I ran is that I saw gaps where I thought that I could help bridge, right? And specifically to this question, I would say one of the tangible ways we can address this issue is bringing in and really voting in leaders who qualify, leaders with a vision. Because when you have a vision and when you cast that out and when you create a tangible strategy to meet that vision and those goals, and then get the community to rally around that, then that's one of the best ways we can address this. But to sit here and say, oh, now let's have a conversation and let's now address this. No, we as leaders have to cast that vision and create opportunities for our community to participate. We have a lot of, like you said, it's not a lack of resources from, you name it, all of these different resources, they are there in our community. But how do we channel those resources to build development and wealth within our community? One of the really good ideas that a couple of community members came up to me and proposed was our own credit union. Can you imagine if we had our own credit union, what that can do for our people? Right now, what we are doing is if somebody passes away, Muchango all the time. Let's create a WhatsApp group. By the time you're done, I literally looked at my finances last year. I almost cried. The amount of money I spend on baby showers, the amount of money I spend on matangas, funerals, the amount of money I spend on weddings. If you don't have money to marry, please take a back seat. And again, don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
that is a part of our culture as we have come to this country and as we have tried to create a community where we can relate to each other. But we are at that point where we have to think differently. And for me, it's creating opportunities for our people to have an opportunity to participate in the growth of our community together as a whole.
Okay. So I'm gonna follow up with that a question.
Mm-hmm. Let's get real.
let's talk about, the thing for me that we are that ABCA group of people. Well, people are younger a little bit than us. Mm-hmm. Those are Africans born confused here in America. Mm-hmm. So they don't know if they are really Kenyan or they are here because they live at home in a Kenyan home, but then they are American. So there's a lot of identity, and all those things that are going on. When I think about great nations, when I think about religious organizations, when I think about community organizations, I see brilliant policies. I see brilliant ideas that are put in place. There are people who are legislators. That's all they do. Yep. Is come up with those. Why is it that the implementation of these does not match what's on paper? Because that's all comes back to leadership. You go third world countries, you know that if you're stopped because you're speeding, this is the fine. There's a law for that. You know that if you do, where's the deficit? Because the laws are there. Even if we add more policies, they're already there. Where's the deficit?
I think that is a really an amazing question. I think the deficit is the groundwork. Okay. Who is there, right? So we can pass all of this great policies all we want, but if the people on the ground who are doing the work, who are implementing those policies are not willing to or are not being supported. Actually, I would rather say are not being supported and given the liberty of implementing that, then there's no point.
Okay.
If we go to Kenya, right, we have a great constitution, to some extent. But then if you look at how it's being implemented, it's the leaders on the ground, right? If you look at who is suffering, it's the common person.
Yeah.
And these leaders that you elect come in and they take what fits them, what fits their personal, what fuels their personal ego, their personal agenda. So I think it comes down to leaders who have the heart to serve the people. Because if you have the heart to serve the people, you won't go out of your way to basically implement that law that is supposed to help everybody to just accommodate your needs and your desires and your wants.
I like what you said. Leaders who have the heart of the people.
Yeah.
How do you make people to have the heart of the people?
They're there. They're there, but they don't run.
So
like you.
No.
Like this one. This one was running, just physically running. But
and the reason I say that is
yes.
I am a Christian. I believe in the system of justice, equity, inclusion, and all those. But there is a notion that because I am a Christian, I cannot involve myself in this and that lest I become corrupt. And what that in turn does, it leaves a void of people who are wanting to rise, to fill those positions, those areas, think about all the greatest movements that have ever occurred. The role that religious people actually played there. Martin Luther, he used his
He's a pastor.
as a pastor, used his pulpit,
He
but
changed
then
the whole
he
world.
changed the entire. You think about Mahatma Gandhi, his religion was all about peace and all that stuff. You think about Desmond Tutu, the late Desmond Tutu, and justice and reconciliation. You think about I was reading even the blacks during the slavery and the time, and the Negro songs, they're all spiritual songs and all that. So how do we reconcile the fact that our heart is leadership?
Yeah.
How do we get there?
Yeah.
Before the able leader answers that question, I think all those people you've mentioned, Ezra, they saw a need.
Yes.
And I think it's fair to say that that's the drive that they had. They wanted to
Feel the need.
the need, or to address the need. So I think you as a Christian, you see the need.
Or even as a person.
Even as a person, right? If there's a need and you see the need and you have the passion, that's the key word. You have the passion, the drive, the energy to address that need. I think for me, if I were to run to be that, I would. What's the need? Are my kids underrepresented in the school board?
Yeah.
I would sit in that board because I want to fulfill, and I will drive and I'll put my heart out there to fulfill that need. So that's for me. That's what drives me. That's what would help to kind of fill that gap. There's a need, needs to be addressed. The energy to address it, I'll go for it. I mean, that's me.
Absolutely. You hit the nail in the head. And to be honest, if you asked me why I'm doing it, is because I see that need. I see being, and a lot of people are like, Momanyi Hiltlsey, somebody told me Momanyi Hiltlsey was village politics. And I sit here and I'm like, you know what? That village politics allowed me to be in a space where it showed me where the gaps are for our community, for the BIPAC community, for the immigrant community, for the Kenyan community, for the Kisii community. It literally broke it all the way down. And for me, I saw all of these opportunities that we miss out on as a community because we don't participate, because we're not sitting at the table, because we completely, and maybe it's because of lack of knowledge, lack of access to information, whatever the situation is, we are missing out. If you look at the Somali community, why do you think they have succeeded the way they have? That's because they came in here with one mindset. They were like, America is it, Minnesota is it, we're not going back to Somalia, we are it. And they banded together as a community and said, we are going to make this place our own. And if you look at right now at the whole entire structure of leadership in the political arena, they are very religious people, They have stacked from the school board all the way to U.S. Congress. While some of us here have been here for, some of these communities, how long have we been? We've been here for decades, especially Kenyans. We have been here for decades, but we have nothing to show for it, except for our degrees. I talked to one Somali leader, and he said, the day Kenyans discover the power in unity, that's when they'll come and completely wipe us out. Because we are the most hardworking community. We are the most smartest in terms of degrees and all of that stuff, and being in places of power within our sphere of influence.
Business owners.
But yet we don't share information. We do not share information. Somebody had asked me one time, Huldah, how do you do your nonprofit in Kenya? I want to do it. I was like, you ready? I'll tell you. Because I know that if that's their passion, and if they really take a hold of it, that's more of our people who are getting benefits. That's why I'm not afraid to say, if somebody is passionate about something, let's come together, let's work together and make sure that we increase the opportunities that are coming into our community. You mentioned something about how do we mobilize ourselves? When we understand the power in unity, when we understand what is at stake. Right now, I was just sitting yesterday when I was door knocking with a couple of people, and some people were like, Huldah, the Kenyan community is very big here in the Twin Cities. And I'm like, where are they? You know, I was very embarrassed. I didn't even know what to tell them because I was like, you're right. But we are not nowhere to be seen. We don't participate. But yet, you find somebody working 3 or 4 jobs to address a need when that need can be addressed by a policy change. You know, so.
So I thank you for for sharing all that. We are talking on the topic of leadership. There's as a people, we can talk about as a people, but I look at our young people and I see the youths who are growing in this country. I see those who are their parents are here, and I look at them. What role does leadership in your education play in terms of even getting like resources like scholarships or things like those? How can younger generations start getting involved at an early age? How can parents support their children and identify those areas that they can succeed so that we don't get ourselves that the next generation is also finding themselves also empty?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's a community issue and not just parents, because some of our parents might not have the access to some of these things that we, have had access to, have been exposed to, So I think it's individuals like yourselves, what you guys are doing here, that brings in people who are in those environments that it can really educate our community about what's possible. And absolutely, parents are a part of that. And it comes down to leadership. Somebody told me this: good people, when they sit on the sideline, contribute to electing bad leaders. For me, politics wasn't in my cards. I wasn't thinking, I'm going to be a politician. No, to me, I had this negative connotation about politics and the messy side of it and all of that stuff. And especially as a Christian from an African background, that adds another layer to that. Yeah. How do you balance your values, your cultural values, your Christian values in this very murky world of politics? But then I realized that if good people who have the right skill set, who have the right experience, who are passionate about serving the community and serving the people that they want to lead, sit on the sideline and say, politics, that's too messy for me, then you know what? We will sit here complaining about the same thing and not seeing the change that we want to see. So I was motivated to run because I was like, as a Christian, I need to be in that seat so I can fight for these values. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a difference between my values, me putting my values on, imposing my values on somebody else, than, fighting for the rights of
other people.
Yep. There's a huge difference there. And so to answer your question, it's good people stepping up and allowing themselves to serve and utilizing their passion. Because some of us are so passionate about something, but then we hold it to ourselves, and especially in our culture, we feel like when we show our cards, somebody's going to do it better than me. Yeah. And that's what's killing our community. Where we refuse to share information because you're afraid that if I share how I'm doing this podcast, that person's going to come and do it better than me, and then I won't be relevant anymore. Not realizing that if they do it better than you, that means what was your original goal? Why did you start this podcast? To impact people. If you find somebody who does it better than you and impacts even a larger community and more people, right, it fulfills your purpose. And when you're comfortable in your own skin and you know your worth and you know what you're capable of doing, sharing information, it's actually something that you freely do because you know the end goal is to what? Help more people.
You mentioned another one of the 3 issues, I think, was I'll probably redefine it: generational wealth, financial stability. See, our parents came and they instilled in this culture of you gotta work. Yes. And some of the people that are here and have parents at home, I mean, anybody can say that we work so we can support our parents, right? And it's something that it has been implanted in our heads. So, and the reason I'm asking you this as a leader, and it needs a generational change, so that my children don't grow up taking care of me.
Intergenerational poverty.
Right.
Generational.
We're passing down
Generational
this
poverty.
Generational poverty. Actually, yeah, not
poverty.
generational wealth. Generational
Generational
poverty.
poverty.
Right.
Because you sit down, you ask yourself, I've been here 20 years.
Yep.
I'm supporting my siblings. I'm supporting my brothers. I'm supporting everyone. At some
Not
point-
only here, but also in Kenya.
Yeah,
Some
whatever.
of us in
So
Kenya.
the question I'm asking is, when do we become at a place where you support them for 2 years so that they can be independent to support themselves? Because you empower them versus this is your end goal, to a point that people die not ever even enjoying their penny or what they worked hard for. Or if people have issues with family members, because you stopped supporting me. Well, that was supposed to be capital to help me go to the... How do we... That's the problem. That's the problem. How do we navigate around that? Because our younger generation, we are in the problem, actually. Because my parents are looking at us when we retire with the retirement plan.
Absolutely.
You have kids who are coming that are waiting for you to save college money for them. How will this generation handle that? How should we prepare ourselves?
That's a heavy question, in the sense that, as we were talking, Ezra, during the break, you talked about having conversations with your dad, your parents. And I echoed what you were saying, because it's the same conversation I'm having with my parents. As they are nearing the retirement age, what have they done? Or what have we done as a community to make sure that they are retiring in a place where they're comfortable, where we as the kids are not their retirement plan. I used to joke around about my daughter, who's 3. She's like, I used to say, oh, she's my retirement plan. But then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, that is that mentality shift that we need to have as a community. We sit here and we have this one-track mind, whack. Support family members here, support family members, and we don't think about sustainability. We don't think about retirement. We don't think about, financial. We don't really have any tangible ways of how we can create wealth that will sustain our parents' generation, our generation, and we continue this cycle to the point where I feel like we are getting to a place where it'll be so hard to turn back the clock, or the
hands of time.
Yes. And so for us, I think it starts with having candid conversations about this topic with our parents, with our community, and talk about what does retirement looks like. And when we talk about financial stability for our community, that can be a topic for another 3 or 4 segments.
That's true. That's going to be something else.
But I think we are at a very critical point where we have to have that mind shift. This is why. Our parents came here. Most of them had this one-track mind of, I'm going to work hard and eventually retire back home. Even to today, you mentioned about your dad building a home somewhere in Kenya. My dad also built a home in Ushago, in the village. Who is living there now? Am I going to live there? Are my kids going to live there? Are your kids going to live there? No. We are raising kids here. Let's be honest. And most of our kids, if we're not careful, they are also losing our identity and who we are. But they're not going to go back. Let's be honest. They're not going to Kenya and saying, I'm going to create a life in Kenya. They are creating life here. Most of our children, me being one of them, are marrying outside of our culture. What does that mean? We're not going back to Kenya. So we have to have this as a community, this mind shift of knowing that we need to start investing here. If you're called to go back to Kenya, absolutely, good readings, go. We are not faulting you for that. Please do.
But Huldah, someone can
Yes.
argue that, like we said in the past podcast, that, these passports are just papers. They can wake up one morning and say, go. And if you haven't invested back home, someone can argue like that. How would you respond to that? I mean,
Ezra, please jump in there.
I think, and this is, I need to take off my sweater now.
Just got hot.
Because the thing is, I think for us, Kenan, that's a very good question you ask. But I keep going back to the mindset and finding, why are you even in existence? Why are you living? What do you want? When today, if Ezra was to die, will I have left a legacy or a burden? Because of how I lived my life, right? So you can invest in both places. There is nothing wrong. But is it fitting your values as a person and what you want to do? Or are you looking at what so-and-so in the village has done and what so-and-so here is doing and what the other people are doing, and that's what you want to do? We need to find, who am I as Ezra, and how does my values align? Because your situation might be different from mine. I have parents back home, and they came from a poor place. They sold their land, but versus my father maybe sponsored me coming. Whether you are there or here, how do you plan your life holistically? From how you're going to retire, to how you are currently living, to how you're raising your children, to how you're engaging in your community that you're living in, to your faith in that. How are you really looking at that?
And why are you doing what?
Why are you doing what you're doing? Because younger generations don't know. They're looking for leadership from us.
Yeah.
They're saying, should I be part of this or should I be part of that? That is, and I'm not expecting an answer. I'm just throwing out an issue, saying that this is what I keep on constantly seeing.
I mean, I think that's something that we have been sitting here debating for decades as Kenyans. Let's be honest. So if somebody comes up to me and say, well, what if they come and take my papers away? How realistic is that? Let's be honest. You've been sitting here 20 years, doing the same thing, having this mentality of going back to Kenya. Now you are at an age of retirement and you have nothing to show for it. And do you know how many people would kill to be in the place of some of us who are here? So it goes back to what Ezra said, in the sense that, what do you want to accomplish? What legacy do you want to leave for your child? Me, I'm passionate about Kenya. There's no doubt about that. My work speaks for itself. But then when my daughter was born, that was a whole different mindset that I had to change. Priorities shifted in the sense that, and somebody, a really good friend of mine told me this, when I was thinking about my leadership and what I really wanted to concentrate on, whether it was Kenya or here. And she said, serve where you live. Serve where you live. And that to me was a wake-up call. And when my daughter was born, I was like, guy, this kid is going to be, is being raised here. She's going to grow up here. This is going to be her home. And what am I doing as a parent to establish an environment where she is thriving, not only for her, but for her children and her children to come, even if I didn't have that background, And so when we are looking at our finances, when we are looking at investment, we are keeping in mind, we are trying to catch up. We are playing catch up right now. And what we are trying to do is create an opportunity so that my daughter don't have to worry about catching up.
That's true. Yep.
Because we spend so much time now catching up, while my counterpart there is... I'm laughing because it's such a sad...
It's a big gap.
It's a big gap because my white friends, I've had the privilege of talking to some really wealthy people. While we are complaining about our next meal, our next paycheck, they're complaining about, my God, I lost this much in that stock. That's the mentality that we need to have. A completely different mentality, mind shift, like you said.
Yep. For me, I have a challenge for us. I think this is what I tell the young people. This is my challenge that I raise to everyone. Leadership is defined, one of the definition is service.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you're making wealth, and in your plan of making wealth, you don't have a plan of service, then in my books, how do you lead? Yeah. Who are you going to serve? If in the $10 you're making, you're not taking 1% to serve someone who's not necessarily even your relative, but someone who's in dire need of something that can help them. Do you know how many people, a friend of mine came here from Kenya, was visiting. He said, this place is like going to the future and then going back to Kenya to implement what the future will look like. Because he saw everything he was looking at was opportunities.
Yes.
When I sit down, I ask myself every day I wake up, even if I'm not in Kenya, there's a northern part of Kenya where people are dying with drought right now. What am I doing with the $10 that I have? What then will I tell people when I get into the office and I want to make policies for that? Yet I have never even contributed for all these days that I had the privilege and the opportunity. Will I even do that? Because it is the point that I am giving and I realize that I cannot sustain this. Then I say, what can I do? Then I'm ascending to the next level where I can do more change because of the service that I want to bring. And as I go to the next level, I realize that there is need. Every greatest leader was born out of some level of problem that needed to be solved and a service that needed to be accomplished. Mahatma Gandhi was and I keep on going to Mahatma Gandhi, but I can go to many other leaders. I can go to, Martin Luther. I can come look at, even spiritually. When you think about people in the Bible, you think of someone like Joseph. There was a drought. And that drought, he comes up with a strategic plan to address that drought, and he makes the entire nation not go hungry. And when he dies, he even has a plan of how he's going to be buried. When you look at Nehemiah, he comes and he sees a city where the walls are all broken, and he says, my people's security is in danger. And he builds those walls in 52 weeks, and he's living perfectly in the palace. He doesn't need to come and do this. So when we make positions what we want, that's when I think we start missing the first step. Don't even go far. Look at churches. Christians. Let's look at even churches. So how are you going to say that I'm praising this God, praying to this God, I'm part of this system, but it comes nomination time, you're fighting? I mean, do you see how dysfunctional? And I think that's what I fear, that as young people, as we have this conversation, there's a greater calling for us, and I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, I mean,
it still keeps on bothering me.
It comes down to having that genuine heart of service.
Yeah.
When you're willing to go out of your way for somebody else because you see their need and you're called to address that need, that character literally builds the type of leader you become. So to me, honestly, and my dad has always taught me, give back. Now what he's starting to tell me, be selfish a little bit, because you're giving to the point where you are taking away from your own family.
You're always gone. You're always giving.
You're always giving. So
balance.
That servant leadership is, and when you discover the joy in that, honestly, you will not find yourself fighting with your colleague. You will not find yourself getting caught up in things that do not promote what you're trying to accomplish, because you have that big picture in mind. Yep. These little things will not even bother you. A good example, one of my leaders on my team, there was an issue that came up in the community, and they were like, Huldah, you need to address it properly right away, blah, 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 with force and this and that. And I sat there and I was like, if I did that, it will open up this Pandora's box, which will hurt the community even more, And so, yes, my dealing with it might not be the type of force that you want to see, but doing it in a manner that uplifts this person, but at the same time addresses the issue that is being created here without making yourself look like now you're the dictator. What is that verse? You're the pastor here. What is that verse in the Bible that says a soft answer?
Why are you putting me on the spot? Proverbs.
right?
Yeah,
You know?
a soft answer.
Rebuke is better than
I'll read it for you. Let me read it for you. Go ahead.
Yes,
Keep going.
yes.
I'll read it
It's
for you.
that verse, you know? And that's what leadership is all about. Leadership is not about, using your position to insert power. Leadership is meeting that person, even if they were in the wrong, still showing grace, still showing that you still care about them. Because if you're always trying to fight somebody because they did you wrong, you will never accomplish anything. You know?
It says, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. So I think as we have this conversation, we're coming up to the winding up, right? So as we have this conversation, I think the goal here is for us, first of all, to get to that place we define that leadership is service. It begins from that. When your heart is right, it takes the right minds to implement human rights. If you cannot implement human rights if your mind is wrong and your heart is wrong, it takes from that first place to do that. Let's take a simple example as we wind up on this. I look around the world. Let me use the example of religion and our African community. And I see everyone investing in their funeral. When they die, I am in this group that will give me X. I am in 4 of them. Somebody's leaving, but is already investing in. And I'm not saying you shouldn't, but you find that someone is spending 30% of their income on that. God forbid that person dies. Who owns that? Everybody else in the family. How much is your burial? $5,000. How much did you have invested in there? $40,000. Who eats? All I'm saying is this: invest in your life. And as you invest in your life of service to others, you will find yourself leaving legacies. And you cannot be a person who's leaving legacies when you haven't planned for your house, planned for that. And when you are leaving legacies, you automatically become a leader, because leaders are born. Leaders just show up. I knew Huldah from high school, running and playing all these and stuff. So I do pray for you, Huldah, as you journey through this journey, that at the heart, at the core of everything you seek to do, you may never forget the heart of service.
Amen.
You may never forget that there is a child, there is a lady, there is a gentleman, somebody somewhere who your tone of voice, your thought process is going to just be the matter of life and death for them. And as the heart is right, oh boy, the sky is the limit. We're talking Senate, as we want to go higher. Kenan, you can give us the parting shots. Then what Huldah will want you to do at the end is I want you to talk to us, your experience in leadership, but I want you to also, anybody who might want to support you, give this a platform for you to just close us in and all that stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll talk and then but anyway, I was just sitting here and I was just being wowed by you guys'.
What do you mean being wowed?
So
You are part of it. What do you
But I think service. I mean, it goes a long way to. I mean, your work speaks for yourself when you be called to serve. When people see you serving, then they know you're a great leader. So don't be tired of serving. And I think Ezra said rightly that this generation, we are at a very pivotal position to change this mindset. So let's encourage ourselves to better ourselves for our kids, for the people that are coming, behind us. So, I read a quote too that, someone that, I'll paraphrase, someone that conducts an orchestra always stands their back to the crowd. What does that mean? Don't listen to these people. Turn your back to them. You're leading an orchestra. It's a wild stage, but your back is against. You're giving the crowd your back. Don't listen. Just focus on what God has called you. Even to you, Ezra.
A profound.
Focus on what
philosopher
God has called you to do. Really, seriously.
I'll be quoting that now.
Focus on what God has called you to do. Drown out the noise. If it's creative, a constructive noise, take it, pray, and move on. So we wish you all the best, though.
Thank you so much.
It was we're glad to have you here. Really.
Thank you for being persistent.
I was. I said, look at your calendar. You need to look at your calendar. Let me know right now.
The way he looked for me, by the way.
Yeah,
I thank
you know, I said once.
I even missed our meeting yesterday, was it yesterday? I don't even remember.
It's all good.
But I said,
Yes.
once I know there's a critical period that you're going into, and I wanted you to come sit with us before it gets too busy. So, really, we're honored to have you here. Seriously.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Once again, I don't know if you want to say something before I finish. It's a privilege. I don't take this lightly in the sense that, you guys are saying something, you have acknowledged something, and that is something that I'm humbled by. And I pray that I'm the type of leader that people see and see servant leadership, a transformational leader who has the heart for the people. Because if I didn't have the heart to serve other people who look like me, might not look like me, but anybody who is in need, then I wouldn't be doing this. I have a very comfortable life if I wanted to, but then when God puts that thing in you, that heart of service, you just have to acknowledge it and really just put your all into it. So I want to, I want to run because I want to be an example, a role model to young girls who are growing up in this country or in Kenya or whatever, to tell them that it is possible. And the young men as well. We talk about the boy child.
Oh, boy child.
The boy child. If God blesses me with a boy, I want to be able to leave a legacy that anything and everything is possible, and that we have an obligation to serve our neighbor. We have an obligation to give back to humanity. And as my brother here said, I am running for State Senate District 40, and it's our time. As Kenyans, as African immigrants, it's our time to put people in places of power where we have a say, where we are able to bring in that voice that is missing, especially in the Minnesota legislature. And I never want to promote my campaign this way, but because I'm amongst my brothers and I'm talking to my community, my Kenyan community and beyond, this is a historic moment in the sense that if I win this seat, when I win this seat, I'll be the first Black woman to be elected to Minnesota's legislature, Senate. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Can you imagine that? The magnitude of that alone, and what comes with that. I'm not running not only for the people of District 40, but also there's programs, there's funding for international work. There's committees within the legislature that addresses international work. How awesome would it be to say, hey, we are able to support this podcast where it's touching our young people in Kenya, right, where you have that collaboration between that. So I want to ask our people to really come out and support me. Together, let's work towards, a place where we are also have a seat at the table. And I can promise you that I'm in it for the right reasons. I'm in it to serve our people. I'm in it to open doors that have been closed to our people for as long as we've been in this country. And with that said, I have an event coming up next weekend.
Okay.
We are going towards the caucuses, and this is that DFL endorsement process. And I need 557 delegates. You needed 100 signatures.
I need 100. You have a tall order.
So I want to encourage our people to participate. If you never participated, now is your chance to participate. And there's so many different ways you can volunteer. Our young people, I am tasking you this.
Hey.
I need volunteers to come and door knock, make phone calls, come out and really be a part of this campaign, because if you are part of it, and especially if our young people are involved in this process at a young age, you know what? Who are we going to be voting for next year, next term? maybe it might be you running for mayor of
Yeah.
Ramsey again.
Right.
You know, maybe it's a couple
You
of
laugh,
your
Ezra.
youths.
Hey,
laugh.
listen,
Okay.
can I sit with you all the time? It's
you
just,
laugh.
I love you, bro. I'll support you.
But yeah.
When he sits on that mayor seat, I want you to be the first one to go and apologize.
Definitely,
Yes,
I will.
yes.
I will. I'll carry his bag.
But I think that our young people have an opportunity to make an impact.
Yeah.
You know, and anything that I can do to help encourage and mobilize them to be a part of the process, please let me know.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Well,
Thank you.
there you have it, listeners. Ours is just to ask questions, which we have done as much as we
Yes.
can.
Very
But I
good
want to finish
question.
by saying this. A couple of things I want to say. Remember, leadership is servanthood. Think global, act local.
Yes.
So wherever you are there not by accident, but for a reason and for a season. Find a reason why you exist, where you are, and what you're doing. And above all, remember, when your heart is right with God, He will lead you through every single footstep that you're taking. So we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Lead in your world. Lead wherever you are with the right cause, with the right mind. Wish you all the best.
Yeah.
And that has been our time here. For my brother too, we'll wish you all the best.
Please, when that time, please vote. And that I'm thinking about it. So,
All right.
But yeah, thank
We'll
you
be here to
for
support you.
thank you for. But remember, don't lead because it's your position. Lead because it's your passion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that was this episode of the Amazing Truth Podcast.